Chair, you're live.
Thank you, Wendy. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Committee. But this is personally very difficult and very raw for me myself today, with very sad news of the loss of our colleague and very close friend, Councillor Peter Clark. After a short illness, bravely borne with great support and dedication for his wife, Jan. I had known Peter before I was elected in 2004 and being a member of the Planning Committee ever since. It is the largest committee in this authority, so we have to be interested, dedicated and committed as a general public expect to be, and so they rightly should expect continuity in the decision making of this committee. The meetings are many, site visits, usually on Monday, Tuesday next day we have committee meeting. Plus most Wednesday on each of the other 3 weeks, most of them, we have Delhi panel. And that's with myself as chair, and it was with Peter Clark, the vice chair, and County Councillor Roger Harris and officers to travel anywhere in the county to meet with residents. And this gives you an opportunity to get to know the whole county. For the last 12 years as chair, planning has been my right-hand man as my vice chair. I was his vice chair previously, and this partnership has always worked very well with great support from the other members and excellent support with our brilliant officers in the planning department and democratic services. Peter was a very proud man when he was elected as county chair for the whole of the county of Monmouthshire. He was elected twice for this, and he felt it was a great honour carrying out these duties to a very high standard, dedication to detail in every aspect. With his commitment to planning goes without saying, he would expect all details and conditions to be considered, especially his passion, as we all know, for overhangs, windows front and back, coloured render. He didn't very much like the coloured through rendered very much. And we all strive for the county of Monmouthshire, a place to be proud of, for ourselves, making decision, and most importantly for the residents that live here. Also, we try to improve the lives of the people that live here, and his experience will be a great loss to everyone. Peter was a kind man, dedicated, sensitive in many ways, passionate and thoughtful. He liked to keep good standards and expected this from others. Firm but fair as he was in his very successful business. I will miss him very much personally, as you will also, and remember him fondly. As we have this last year with our committee member, the passing of David Dovey almost a year ago. Members, I know a lot of you will want to pay tribute to Peter, but as we have an agenda to consider today, I am sure Peter would want business to continue as usual. Time will therefore be offended at full council later this month for you to do so. Therefore, would you join with me and observe a minute's silence in respect and tribute for the passing of our dear friend and colleague, County Councillor Peter Clark. Thank you all very much indeed. We therefore, I'm afraid, still have to get on with the business as we are the elected members to do so. Gosh, because of this sad news only 2 days ago, and thankfully I am back now in better health, and I must thank all the committee for your kind wishes. I do appreciate them, and I wish to also thank Councillor Anne Webb and Councillor Paul Jordan for standing in at such short notice as they had to stand in as chair and vice chair for the last committee. We think it's appropriate that maybe we would delay the election of vice chair to the next committee meeting it'll be then on the agenda for the next meeting on the 1st of February. I will now continue with my introduction, as we always have to do, with the legalities of the Planning Committee, and I welcome everyone. I myself am County Councillor Ruth Edwards, Chair of the Committee, of the Planning Committee. I welcome the public and members of the public. Will some of them be on board because we live stream, and also the offices. I do hope you've all had a good Christmas break and New Year. As I read this now, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Planning Committee, which is being held fully remotely. The meeting has been held in accordance with the emergency legislation that enables the Council to hold this meeting remotely, alongside the Council's constitution, and ensures that the Council can continue to operate and make democratic decisions in an open and transparent way. I would like to remind members that this meeting is still being live streamed to the public, and can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking directly to the committee to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise. All sections of the Members' Code of Conduct will apply to members in this virtual meeting environment and are as applicable now as they are in a traditional meeting setting. Can I also remind members of the meeting to ensure their chat functionality is switched on, and should they wish to speak on a particular item, to make the request clear in that area, and I will invite you in to speak at the relevant point of the meeting, where you'd then be asked to unmute your microphone and switch on your camera back on. Decisions of this remote committee will hold the same weight as a decision of a normal planning meeting, provided that the meeting remains quorate and meets its legislative requirements to make a decision, regardless of whether a member of this meeting is unable or to cast their vote due to the technical issues. The decision of the committee will remain valid. So I hope that's all in accordance to how we've usually done our planning committee. I now ask we go back to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, please.
Just one apology, Chair, from Councillor Feakins.
Right, thank you very much, Richard. Any declarations of interest, please? Any members? I'll take that there are no declarations of interest. And to confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the last meeting, I shall ask anybody if they wish to move or if there is anything to be noted, and the minutes will be signed by the appropriate member next time they're in County Hall. Any notes of accuracy that weren't raised before?
Jim Higginson here, Madam
Yes,
Chairman.
thank you,
I move we accept them.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Higginson. Have you a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Right, thank you, Councillor Murphy. That's been seconded as well. So we'll now go on to consider the applications that we have in front of us today. I believe the first one, are you presenting that then, Phil? Thank you very much. Will you please introduce yourself as well? Thank you.
Yes. Can I just check that members can hear me? I'm using headphones. I'll take them out if members can't hear me very well.
That's better when you've got it there in your hand.
All right, so I need to raise it up a bit closer. That's fine. Okay, thanks, members. Okay, my name is Philip Thomas. I'm Development Services Manager with Monmouthshire County Council. I'm presenting the first item, which is the hybrid planning application, outline application for up to 155 dwellings, associated open space and infrastructure, with all matters excluding access reserved, of which full planning permission is sought for 72 dwellings, associated open space and infrastructure, land at Vinegar Hill. Thank you. I'll just share the presentation as well with members so that as I talk through my script. So if we start from there. Right. Okay. So the application comprises of 4 fields of 5.4 hectares located on the northern edge, as you can see from that slide, on the northern edge of Undy. The site is situated between a modern housing estate to the south and the M4 motorway to the north, which is that blue line there, as you can see. The LDP identifies the site as a strategic residential housing development site under allocation SAH6. The allocated site extends to a cumulative area of 7.8 hectares with an anticipated provision of up to 226 dwellings. This site is, the actual application site is smaller than that, and I'll come to that later to explain why. The preferred route of the potential Megarundi bypass crosses through the site from west to east, as you can see on that the dotted depiction there on the slide. The application site is split either side of the adopted but unclassified highway known as Vinegar Hill, which is that white line there. Parcel A is positioned on the western side. So if we go to that, Parcel A is the western side here, the west of Vinegar Hill, and Parcel B to the east. Parcel A consists of two fields of 2.7 hectares, which is this area, as I've said. There's a hedgerow running through there. It's bisected by that hedgerow. A public right-of-way runs from Grange Road, passing through a gap in the hedgerow boundary and the western boundary, and then runs broadly across the site to there. And to the east, Vinegar Hill provides a narrow minor route up to the hamlet known as Nolbury, which is it crosses over the motorway to reach. The M4 is certainly perceptible along Grange Road, which we saw yesterday, Monday on the site visits, despite being separated by that vegetated buffer and being in a cutting. The site, the northern part of Parcel A, which is that area there, which I hope you can see with my cursor, does fall within the former safeguarding area of the M4 Relief Road, but notice was sent in June 2021 cancelling the restriction given the decision not to proceed with the Relief Road. Part of the site is also within an allocated mineral safeguarding area for limestone, which I'll also mention later. Parcel B consists of two fields, also of 2.7 hectares, divided by a short hedgerow running north to south. A public right-of-way enters the western boundary from Vinegar Hill. Again, that's something those members who were at the site visit saw on Monday, and it turns south to allow access to Breezy Bank Wood, which is that woodland there over to the right of the slide. The western field is bound on the north and south by fields which are outside the application, but do form part of the LDP allocation, this area to the immediate area there where there's a bite out of the site and to the north. The eastern field adjoins a strategic site at Rockfield Farm, and the southern boundary runs along the edge, as I said, of Breezy Bank Wood, which is recognised as being a site of importance for nature conservation, a SINC, which is a local designation of nature conservation importance. The site has been the subject of extensive negotiation. Amendments have been made to the property types, the green infrastructure provision, ecological mitigation, open space provision and landscape features which will be used to address surface water drainage requirements necessary for the proposal to achieve sustainable drainage approval body consent. As part of the initial submission, it was proposed that Vinegar Hill be closed to through traffic. However, in response to public objections to ensure that the development was more permeable, amended plans were received in summer 2021, indicating the extent of Vinegar Hill to the south of the development would remain open to two-way traffic, with the section of the lane between the two parcels of land converted to a shared pedestrian cycleway. As a result of the alteration, traffic travelling north on Vinegar Hill would either turn left through Parcel A along the estate road there and then join Grange Road to the north, or turn right to pass through Parcel B, then following on the new development at Rockfield Farm and then on down to the B4245. Properties on the northern side of the M4 motorway, for instance at Nolbury, would retain their existing access along Grange Road, and the plans have been subsequently amended to reflect these alterations. So full planning permission is sought for 72 dwellings on the western side of Vinegar Hill, that's Parcel A, which I've got the cursor on there, with outline consent for up to 83 dwellings on the eastern part, Parcel B. There's no layout as such for that, and that would, if permission is granted today, that would be subject to reserved matters approval. So they would, the dwellings in Parcel A would comprise a range of dwelling types, which I'll come to now. Dwelling types from 1-bedroom flats up to 4-bedroom dwellings. Have a look through some of the ranges of house types as well. The buildings would be 2-storey in form and finished externally with a mix of render, brick and reconstituted stone, and with concrete roof tiles. That's a street scene, so you get an idea of the variety of house types there. The affordable housing is here. So 18 of the dwellings proposed, that would be 25%, are allocated as affordable homes on Parcel A and comprise a mix of 1-bedroom flats and 2-, 3- and 4-bedroom houses dispersed across the site. And Parcel A would be principally accessed, if I go back to the slide, there, principally accessed from Grange Road to the north. The primary road would descend in a southerly direction, then travel eastward across the site to cross Vinegar Hill, where it's closed off, and access Parcel B. A swale with associated attenuation pond would be accommodated in the centre of the site. You can see that linear green feature there. The proposed layout plans also indicate the provision of a trim trail, an area of public open space adjacent to the eastern and northern edges of the site, with a community orchard provided adjacent to the western boundary. In respect of Parcel B, indicatively, the outline element of the proposal seeks to provide up to 83 dwellings, predominantly positioned to the southwestern corner, that's it in this area, and to the north of the principal access. Sustainable urban drainage features in an enhanced area of landscaping are indicated as being provided adjacent to the southeastern and southern boundaries, and would be used to provide a buffer between the built form and the breezy bank sink, that wooded area there. This residential area would also deliver 25% affordable housing units that would be up to 21 units. There has been substantial objection from residents to the proposed development, with key issues ranging from loss of green spaces, concerns about traffic, access and highway safety, drainage issues and impacts on existing public infrastructure, although there are other concerns as well. In respect to the principle of development, the vast majority of the site is allocated for housing development in the adopted LDP. It should be noted that the application site does not encompass all the area, as I've said, forming part of the LDP allocation. An area of land extending up to 1.4 hectares adjoining the northern boundary of Parcel B. That's this sort of area, sorry, there, if you can see my cursor, sort of roughly this area here. Yeah, does not, so that area has not been included as the applicant has been unable to secure a contract agreement with the landowner. The site, however, does include a parcel of land on the northern boundary of Parcel A, extending up to 0.28 hectares. It's this area here, immediately south of Grange Road, which does, and this area also falls outside the development boundary and is positioned within a mineral safeguarding area for limestone. And as a result of this, including this land, the proposal has been advertised as a departure from the development plan. However, it's considered that its inclusion represents an acceptable departure, having regard to 1, the strongly defined boundary of the site provided by the hedge line and route of Grange Road to the north, the positioning of other dwellings immediately to the west of the site which address the highway and follow the same northern boundary, and 3, the reduced area of the application site relative to the LDP allocation and the need to include the land within the proposal in order to deliver the access from Grange Road and bring forward the allocated site for development. With regards to the land being within a mineral safeguarding area, there is a need to provide a buffer to protect existing residential dwellings and the M4 in the locality from the impact of potential minerals working. So consequently, minerals extraction would not be practical in this location. In accordance with the requirements of Policy S4, the applicant has indicated the provision of 25% affordable housing within the scheme and has confirmed that they are willing to enter into a Section 106 agreement to secure this provision in perpetuity. Based on the above, it's considered that the principle of developing the site for residential purposes has already been positively established by the plan allocation, which has been thoroughly reviewed as part of the plan process by the LDP inspector. The current proposal is therefore acceptable in principle, subject to the application satisfying detailed design and other material considerations. Following amendments to the layout and design of Parcel A, the proposal is considered acceptable and of a good standard of design that respects the character and appearance of the area. The site has been designed with a principal distributor road with smaller zoned areas leading from this. The retention and provision of natural features such as hedgerows and landscaped areas will help enhance character, with the residents being within walking distance of a variety of open spaces and green corridors. Care has been taken to ensure the public rights of way that cross the sites are retained, although these will be subject to minor adjustments to follow the hedgerow, which acts as a strategic green infrastructure corridor. The landscaping features and details will help to provide buffer zones and provide distinctive areas and elements that will assist in providing permeability and legibility within and between the sites. With regards to Parcel A, due to the extensive sustainable drainage requirements of the site, the public open space will be multifunctional and include the SUDS provision. So as said, that central green corridor there across the Parcel A. It will also provide pedestrian access and green infrastructure. A community orchard would be provided adjoining the western boundary and a trim trail adjacent to the eastern boundary. The open space would be unequipped, with the developer making a financial contribution to maintain other existing equipped provision in the area, as requested by the council's community infrastructure officer. In all cases, the dwellings surrounding would be orientated to face onto the open space to increase natural surveillance. The layout, dwelling designs and GI provision are considered acceptable and would deliver a development that provides a good quality of place in which people will enjoy living. The affordable homes will be similar in design and materials to the market housing proposed. The proposed development would not have a harmful effect on the biodiversity and ecological value of the area. The application is therefore considered compliant with LDP policies in this respect. Based on the layout and hard and soft landscaping plans submitted for Parcel A, in association with the orientation of the site to the north of existing dwellings in Quarry Rise, the development is considered acceptable in terms of its impact on existing neighbours, with distances between the rear of existing and proposed houses being sufficient so as not to unacceptably affect privacy, light, or be significantly overshadowing. During the public consultation process, numerous concerns have been raised with regards to highway safety and the free flow of traffic on the local and wider highway network. As part of the application, a transport assessment has been submitted that has considered the impact of the proposal on the local network on the basis of with or without the M4 corridor around Newport, the historically protected Undy mega bypass, and the requirement to provide an east-west link to the adjacent Rockfield Farm site. The traffic assessment specifically modelled and tested a variety of development scenarios, with the results indicating that the impact on the local network, including the B4245 and key junctions, would be minimal. The development would be primarily accessed off Grange Road, as we've seen from the north, through the formation of a new priority T junction. The junction has been designed to achieve appropriate visibility displays in line with technical guidance for the speeds recorded on this highway. The layout has been designed to accommodate the movement of refuse and fire tender vehicles in and out of the site. As part of the scheme, traffic calming measures would be introduced to Grange Road to include build-outs, creating a 1.5 metre pavement on the western side, prioritise traffic flows to help overcome issues where the carriages were reduced width and pedestrian crossings. These details will be secured by the developer entering into a Section 106 agreement to ensure an agreement under Section 278 of the Highways Act is then secured. Through the LDP process, access to the site has been identified from Grange Road and Dancing Hill, with an access link via the adjacent Rockville Farm strategic site to the east. As part of the plan allocation, it is required that the development provide a highway connection in the eastern boundary within Rockville Farm. So that's that yellow arrow on that slide there. As a result, the layout of Parcel B will be designed so as not to prejudice this link from being completed in the future. However, it is noted that this connection would only be required when Parcel B is built out. The completion of this connection in the future would provide a continuous route from the B4245 through the developments at Rockville Farm and Vinegar Hill to Grange Road. In respect of the proposal to close the northernmost section of Vinegar Hill to vehicular traffic, Highways concluded that the creation of a new junction into the proposed estate road, the future west-east link, and the closure of the section of Vinegar Hill between the proposed estate road and Grange Road was the most practical and sustainable solution, in that it firstly maintained a secondary access to Vinegar Hill for emergency vehicles. Secondly, provides a more direct route for residents who reside in the northern section of Vinegar Hill, avoiding the need to travel the length of Vinegar Hill from its junction with the B425. Thirdly, traffic flows will not increase to levels that would be detrimental to the current capacity and use of Vinegar Hill, as traffic generated by the proposed development is unlikely to navigate Vinegar Hill to access the B road when a more commodious and expedient route is available via Grange Road and Dancing Hill. The changes to Vinegar Hill will not be implemented until such time as Phase B is completed, and when the Phase A, that's the 72 dwellings, estate road is adopted as public highway, therefore enabling the diversion of Vinegar Hill onto a public highway. A construction traffic management plan with details specified to prevent construction traffic using Vinegar Hill will be imposed, provided consent is granted by members. The scheme is considered acceptable in highway safety and access grounds. As regards drainage, Dŵr Cymru has indicated that the impact of the development on capacity issues in the existing network could be overcome through investment and enhancement of the network, and there is confirmation of an agreement in principle to undertake the improvements to the network, ensuring the site is able to connect to the mains and then will not have a negative impact on the wider area or system. Subject to the imposition of the conditions requested by Welsh Water, Dŵr Cymru, the application is considered compliant with LDP policies. The surface water drainage strategy for Parcel A proposes a number of sustainable drainage options forming part of the development. These include attenuation ponds, swales and permeable surfaces, leading to an interlinked drainage system that will then drain the net increase of surface water runoff from the development. Following a review and a pre-application submission, the SAB team, the Council SAB team, have confirmed that an appropriate drainage strategy for Parcel A has now been formulated, although a formal application is awaited. It is also understood as an update to the report that MCC drainage engineers are satisfied that there are viable options available for Site B relating to SUDs in compliance with LDP policies. The effects of local traffic on the air quality for residents living in the proposed development have been shown to be acceptable at the worst case locations assessed near the M4, with concentrations being well below the air quality objectives. The development will have no adverse effects on local air quality conditions and does not introduce new exposure within an area of poor air quality, and thus no additional mitigation has been proposed for the operational impacts. A small number of plots in the northern part of the site nearest the M4 would potentially exceed recommended noise levels. Noise mitigation can be put in place via enhanced insulation, uprated acoustic glazing, and mechanical ventilation to ensure the plots achieve acceptable internal noise levels. Subject to the imposition of a condition requiring the implementation of noise mitigation measures in the form of building facade construction and ventilation provision to the habitable rooms of the plots, referred to in the noise assessment, the application is considered compliant with the relevant requirements of policy EP1 of the LDP. In conclusion, we would recommend approval for this scheme, subject to a Section 106 agreement requiring the following heads of terms. There'll be contributions off-site to fund community facilities in the Mager and Undy area. The amounts are obviously indicated in Section 7 of the report. There'll be an on-site public open space provision. There'll be an off-site recreation contribution as requested by council officers. There'll be green infrastructure provision. There'll be education commuted sums. There'll be a sustainable transport commuted sum. And in terms of highways, there would be the need to enter a Section 278 agreement, as said, to secure off-site highway alterations and improvements on Grange Road and Vinegar Hill. And there would be the need to secure 25% affordable housing across both development parcels in perpetuity. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much indeed, Phil. Quite a detailed report, and I'm sure all members of the committee have read their reports beforehand, because it is a lot to take on board. Several members were able Monday to go to the site. I'm sorry I was unable to go. I've got several members of the public wishing to speak, as there was more than 5 objections. The first one, I believe, is a local member, Councillor Lisa Dimmock, followed, hopefully, if she has any comments to make, will be Francis Taylor, the award that joins Lisa's. So Lisa, you have 6 minutes, I believe, and then later on you can have 2 minutes to sum up afterwards if you so wish.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your kind words with regards to our dear colleague and friend, Councillor Clark. And thank you, Thomas, for that comprehensive presentation. Many of you will know that Mager and Undy has been overdeveloped over the years and the infrastructure has not developed at the same rate. I think our health and well-being of our residents should be of utmost importance, and I fear that local doctors and dentists will not cope with the increased population from the proposed development. I'm asking for some clarity today from officers due to the email that was sent on the 13th of February 2020 from the local health board, and it was assumed that due to no objection that the surgery had adequate space. The environmental health officer states that the majority of the site indicated to fall under NECB of TAN 11, with properties on the most northern boundary adjacent to the M4 falling under NECC. NECB noise should be taken into account when determining planning applications where appropriate, conditions imposed to ensure an adequate level of protection. However, worryingly, NECC planning permission should not be normally granted where it is considered that permission should be given. For example, there are no alternative quieter sites available. Conditions should be imposed to ensure a commensurate level of protection noise. Can our planning team provide evidence that there are no alternative sites that would be more suitable within the county? Is this really the best site for good housing with the constant noise and pollution of traffic from the M4? The loss of green space is going to significantly impact Undy residents. Over the last 20 months, we've come to realise as a nation how important green space plays in our health and well-being. These fields have provided both adult and children with vital space to play and exercise during recent lockdowns. Surrounding green space are not suitable to and available to the general public other than NDFC and the 3 field site, and so there is no usable green space in the area. Dancing Hill and the B4245, I have concerns over the exit and entrance onto the B4245 from Dancing Hill, and the speed and volume of traffic has always remained one of the greatest concerns for Mager and Undy residents. With another 155 houses, that means we could be looking at additional 300 plus cars. Unfortunately, we have not seen the expected number of people remain working from home. There are already large volumes of congestion at the bottom of Dancing Hill, which I'm sure Francis will support me on. For those residents heading to work on the M4, the speed of those travelling through Mager and Undy and up Dancing Hill pose a great danger, and I welcome the crossing and the wider pedestrian walkways, but I would like reassurance from the committee and planning department that you ensure that the correct measures are in place for reducing speed on both roads. With regards to the Vinegar Hill issue, another worry I share with my constituents is road safety for Vinegar Hill and its residents. I canvassed Vinegar Hill at the beginning of 2020 before the pandemic hit to seek views on the previous proposal to close Vinegar Hill at the top to avoid new residents from the proposed development using it as a rat run. My findings were everyone north of the S-bend would want access via Grange Road, and residents south of the S-bend would want the road closed off. Due to the number of objections received on the closing off of Vinegar Hill from residents, it was decided that Vinegar Hill remain open, as we have just heard. However, I do not feel this is a true reflection of residents' views. Further consultation and thought should be applied. Vinegar Hill can be an awkward road to use. Most sections of the road are single car width, with areas at 3.3 metres wide. For pedestrians, it's risky with no footpath available, and a lot of people walk from Vinegar Hill to access ND Primary School and Rockfield Grove Estate, as well as the residents that live on the hill. I have sent images to the planning department where HGVs have become stuck, blocking roads, and residents' properties being damaged by vehicles because it is too tight. When there is an accident on the B4245 or the M4, Maygra and ND becomes congested immediately, and you will have residents using Vinegar Hill as a rat run, as you already do. And if you have more than 3 to 5 cars meeting, that will soon become gridlock. That is without large vehicles being involved, such as home deliveries. Residents have said that should this happen, they will close off their driveways, so they cannot be used as pull-in areas to pass. What will happen then? Highways also indicated that Highways traffic count was carried out on the 17th of April during a school term, but the traffic assessment statement says the 3rd of April. For the sake of residents watching this meeting right now, can you please clarify which is correct?
Sorry to interrupt you there, Lisa, but Councillor Davis, your camera is on and it's very disconcerting when someone is given a presentation. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I lost all connection. I had to reconnect. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Lisa. Sorry, I haven't interrupted your flow.
No, that's fine. ND School. So we still continue to receive complaints from ND residents with regards to parking on Penny Farthing Lane due to the congestion around school drop-off and pick-up times. Off-the-road parking is required to eliminate the parking issue, and on either side of Penny Farthing Lane, which will only be worsened by the proposed development. I asked the committee to review this also. There are poor transport links, both mega station, which I accept falls with Welsh Government, and an improved bus service are a must for the area. We need to get people off the road and walking and cycling from east of ND to Roggett. That pathway is still not being delivered. People who cannot drive cannot access the nearest town, which has our libraries, our hubs, our just 2 seconds, and leisure centre safely without waiting for minimal buses to pass through the village. With regards to road layout, it's been raised that refuge vehicles are already struggling around the Greystone site, which is the old Rockfield farm, and there was mountains of waste waiting to be collected, and it was simply down because the vehicle could not manoeuvre around the streets properly. Have I just got 2 seconds? And we've seen terrible flooding in the area and houses impacted for the first time in Christmas 2020. The provision on Rockfield Farm development has caused flooding to the community allotments, and at the top of Vinegar Hill it also suffers from flooding. Before where you're going to have the cross between the two estates. Can you provide me some reassurance that we will not encounter similar issues, because our MCC employees are having to visit regular to empty the gullies there? Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Councillor, but you may have 2 minutes later on if you wish to sum up.
Okay,
but,
thank you.
Sorry, Phil, do you wish to comment on that before I take Francis's comments? Or Craig?
Should we do that all together after the end of the comments, Chair? Is that okay with you?
Yes, that's fine, Craig. Councillor Francis Taylor, do you wish to now comment as you're the award that adjoins Lisa's ward?
I am, Chair. Thank you very much for affording me the opportunity to address committee today. members, so Lisa's given a really good overview. Councillor Dimmock's given an overview of a number of the issues that affect this site. I concur with her on on all of those issues, but I would just want to pull out three specific issues that I think either I would ask committee to specifically look at the conditions in more detail on, Chair. So you will recall that this site was not part of Monmouthshire Council's local development plan initially. It's actually a new allocation made by the planning inspector. And the site has sat in abeyance for, well, it's not short of 7 years now, Chair, 7-8 years. And that is even though it has been owned by a developer for all that time. And that is because it's a very difficult site to develop. And I know that Phil's taken us through some of the issues and how they've tried to address those. But there are, I think, 3 key points. But actually, just on the issue of vehicle movements, I just want to concur with Councillor Dimmock on this. Only yesterday, so Bovis, who is one of the partner developers, has the Kingfisher site, which is the late, probably apart from Rockfield, was the last to be finished in Mega. That site hadn't received its refuse collections for 3 weeks because the vehicle cannot negotiate the site, and the arrangements, which are, I fully understand, are to a certain extent in the gift of residents, collect the refuse, are simply not working as they should. And I do believe, Chair, that is closely linked to the design. So where you have areas that are not part of the main highway, the highway vehicles are meant to collect from the edges of them, but sometimes the way that the site is configured, the on-site parking, etc., means that the vehicle simply cannot negotiate these new sites. And that is clearly problematic. It's problematic for the authority in the long term, because it means that instead of doing a collection, we've sent vehicles out to do missed collections because we simply haven't been able to negotiate the sites. And the more and more of these sites we allow to be developed, Chair, the more difficulty the authority is going to have in maintaining things like its waste collections in a really difficult way. The 3 key things I want to talk to you about, though, are highways, water and flooding, or surface water flooding in particular, and affordable housing. So the report mainly considers the traffic movements on Vinegar Hill. Now, I would agree Vinegar Hill is actually quite a difficult highway. You've seen it yourself, Chair, I'm sure. It's very narrow and problematic, and to a certain extent, one could argue has been overdeveloped already with them, which makes it even more difficult to navigate. But there's very little in fact, hardly in anything at all that I could discern about the traffic movement onto Grange Road and then Dancing Hill. In fact, in the report, it states that people who live on Vinegar Hill use Grange Hill and Dancing Hill. I mean, I have to say, unless they lived right at the top and they were going west, I think that's very debatable. I'm not sure about some of the assumptions made in there. But neither Grange Road nor the top of Dancing Hill are, they're not priority gritting routes. I don't know, that's noted as an important factor. Then neither are they. But actually, it's very important, I think, because this was always the original thought when the original master plan was being considered, is that the main estate road through this estate and that through Rockfield
Please
Farm.
could you wind up, Thank you.
Because you have to provide an alternative route to those who live on these 2 strategic sites. But however, in this application, there is no compunction for the developer to do that. There is a need for some off-site highway improvement, which is noted, but there is absolutely no clarity on what that should be, Chair, and I don't believe that it is sensible to allow that. Dancing Hill has already been identified as having extremely high speeds due to its topography of up to 60 miles an hour. It has a SID unit which hasn't worked for years. It's really problematic, but yet we're going to allow so many more vehicle movements.
You're extending your Councillor Taylor.
Oh, sorry, just the point of affordable housing, Chair. I think it's important to note, it doesn't say this in the report, but it's delightful to see that there are 18 affordable homes. However, the layout is not compliant with Monmouthshire's own affordable housing supplementary planning guidance, because that requires pepper potting, Chair. And you will note that all the affordable homes are in the southwest corner, and properties should be of no more, in clusters of no more than 6 to 15 units, which is not the case. And then finally, I think Councillor Dimmock's pointed out the issues with surface water and drainage, but the fact that Welsh Water have not agreed to a connection, only an agreement in principle is in place, I think is exceptionally problematic. Here in Mega, we've had huge problems.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. I think I've been very lenient, and you've definitely had your more than 4 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you. We now have community councillor which comments, but those are going to be read by our planning officer, Craig. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, for the purpose of people at home, I'm Craig O'Connor, Head of Planning for Monmouthshire County Council. I'm reading these comments from the Community Council, based on the Community Council. The proposal is to partially close off the northern end of Vinegar Hill and allow access for the new development onto Vinegar Hill could be a huge health and safety risk, with the potential for it to become a rat run to the B4245. Planning Inspector described Vinegar Hill as narrow, tortuous road with no footways and a combination of restricted visibility, substandard accesses and volume of traffic giving rise to potential hazardous condition for road users, and refused access points in DC 1997-00237. Planning has continued to allow infill along Vinegar Hill, increasing traffic despite it being a safe route to school. Access to the development is via Grange Road. What plans are in place for construction traffic to mitigate accident congestion on Grange Road, particularly at the narrow corner adjacent to Hillcrest? Danton Hill is also very busy, feeding the existing estate. Council presume that the proposed road that will connect the new development with Rockfield and the B4245 is to replace the bypass planned for the area in excess of 30 years. Developers should be tasked with putting in this link bypass road first to mitigate congestion on Vinegar Hill, Grange Road and Danton Hill by construction traffic. Drainage/SUDS at the new Greystone Meadows is totally inefficient, with MUCC in talking to Matt Jeffs, flood risk engineer for Monmouthshire County Council. Attenuation ponds cannot cope with the runoff, causing flooding to adjacent allotments and raising manholes on the B4245 and site. Surge drainage for the Vinegar Hill development must be more robust and over the top. Runoff from Grange Road and Vinegar Hill Crest causes regular flooding on the lane and Gurn Hill Lodge, with soakaway drains inadequate. 2 fields east of Vinegar Hill, phase 2 of the Vinegar Hill development, have deep seasonal flooding with runoff from Norbury, Vinegar Hill and Gurn Hill. Monmouthshire County Council needs to be assured that the SUDS drainage proposals are robust and conditions are met to mitigate flooding. Mega Undy had problems connecting to the public sewer, with installation of private cesspits becoming the norm because of capacity problems, despite a new raising main installation. On the proposal to connect to the existing sewer system, Deo Cymru concluded it is unlikely to have sufficient capacity to accommodate the development without having a detriment to existing services. This must be resolved. The community cannot endure the problem of overloaded sewers again. Is the developer providing children's play facilities? Is it covered by Section 106 agreement that includes a contribution to community facilities? The Community Council provides the area's largest children's parks and would welcome funding to update, refurbish them. Council notes proposals to plant trees, small orchards and to maintain existing hedgerows. It should be a condition that the developer plant only invasive native species which provide cover and food for birds and mammals. The west-east green corridor is the flight path for bats, hunting raptors and barn owls. No allowance has been made for bats nesting birds, i.e. house martin, nest cups or artificial nests for caviting nesting birds, house sparrows. The Community Council believes that conditions can be put in place by the authority to mitigate some problems, but with a programme of checks to ensure that planning conditions are adhered to. And that concludes the statement from the Community Council, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Craig, and I expect you're going to be now instigating the video that we have from the applicant. I believe that is Kate Coventry, is that correct?
Yes,
Thank
that's correct.
Craig.
That's correct, Jeff. If members could just bear with me with technology for a moment. Chair, can you tell me if you can
Yes, I can see that, Craig, as a young lady with spectacles.
Oh, I have the two.
It's gone again now.
Okay, one moment.
That's okay again.
Is that back? Yes.
Yes.
I will now play the video. This is the applicant having the right to reply to the public speaking that's taken place, Chair.
Right. Thank you, Craig.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Kate Coventry and I am the planning agent at LRM Planning, acting on behalf of the applicant, Vistry Homes. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. Your officer has written a comprehensive report as to why this application should be approved. It is therefore not necessary for me to repeat all of these reasons. Instead, I intend to draw members' attention to a few key matters in respect of green infrastructure, highways and drainage, which I hope will aid in your positive consideration of this application. The site is allocated within the Council's adopted local development plan at policy SAH6. It is located adjacent to the established built-up urban area of Mega and Undy and connects to the approved housing allocation of Rockfield Farm, which is under construction and forms the connecting point for the East-West Link Road. Grant funding has now been received from the Cardiff Capital Region in light of the viability matters on site. The scheme aims to deliver up to 155 dwellings across the 2 parcels of land divided by Vinegar Hill. The application site does not extend over the entirety of the allocation. However, the scheme design ensures that it does not prejudice this area of land should it come forward in the future. The scheme, through the grant funding, is able to deliver 25% affordable housing on site and will aid in the shortfall across the county. There has already been a pre-application inquiry undertaken with the officers for the detailed design of Parcel B, and it is considered an application will be submitted on receipt of the planning permission. Through consultation with the council, the scheme has evolved into one designed around green infrastructure, including 2 key corridors running north to south and east to west across the 2 parcels of land. These have not only been maintained on site but enhanced, which in turn delivers a net biodiversity benefit overall. There is also a net gain in hedgerows and trees across the site, with the delivery of the community orchard and public open space. As detailed
Craig, we've got a blip. No volume.
I think perhaps muting yourself has muted the video, Craig.
A new scheme was submitted.
Okay again.
Top of Vinegar Hill, with some access remaining to the south.
But she is
And still enables the East-West Link Road to connect from Rockfield Farm through the...
Chair, shall I go back a couple of seconds?
Yes, a couple of slides you need to go back. A few seconds, actually.
Throughout the course of the preparation, submission and determination of the application. Together, they have designed a scheme which will provide safe travel across the local highway network and prevent inappropriate levels of traffic on unsuitable roads. In July 2021, a new scheme was submitted which closes the top of Vinegar Hill with some access remaining to the south. This design still enables the East-West Link Road to connect from Rockfield Farm through this site and onto Grange Road, as required through policy. As set out in the latest Highway Officer comments, this scheme is the most practical and sustainable solution, which does also provide emergency access. The Council's drainage officers have confirmed that the scheme is an appropriate drainage strategy. Although the requirement for the preparation of the SUD scheme came in after the allocation and has caused delays and viability issues on site, it should be recognised that these have all been overcome and that the scheme is deliverable. To conclude, this is the last remaining strategic allocation in the Council's adopted local development plan. It accords with both national and local policy and has received your office's support. The scheme will provide an important contribution to both market and affordable housing numbers and is not subject to the constraints experienced elsewhere in the county. Vistry Homes are a 5-star house builder and have demonstrated through their proactive approach to this application that they are keen to deliver this site as soon as possible. I would respectfully request that members support your office's recommendation for approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you to Craig. Few hiccups, but I think we got the gist of all of that. One clarity, Craig, when it's noted about the 25% affordable, and we're talking sometimes about 2 sites, that is separate though, isn't it? 25 for each site?
It's 25% across the board, Madam
Across
Chair.
the whole board?
Across the 155 units is 25%. So within Parcel A, which is a full planning application, you've got 18 affordable units,
Right.
which is 25% of that parcel, and then we'd also be seeking 25% of Parcel B when that comes forward. So it's 25% of the whole 155 units.
Right, thank you for that clarity, Craig.
It is fully policy compliant in terms of the provision of affordable housing, and we'll pick up the other points that Councillor Taylor has made in the questions now from
Yes.
the answers from officers.
Yes.
Phil, do you want to come in first to cover some of those areas?
Yeah, there's particular reference made by Councillor Dimmock to noise and loss of green space. So in terms of noise, I mean, the document quoted by Councillor Dimmock or referred to by Councillor Dimmock is guidance. It's not regulation, so it's not something we have to absolutely adhere to. And in this instance, there's mitigation put in place that can actually avoid any unacceptable impacts, and that would be conditioned, so that we can then secure very high levels of insulation, uprated acoustic glazing and mechanical ventilation where windows would be non-opening facing out towards the north and the motorway. That would then ensure the plots achieve acceptable internal noise levels. The gardens, if you note, it's only those units that are immediately along the northern side of the site facing Grange Road. The gardens of those units, and none of them affordable, by the way, members should note, the gardens would be at the rear of those properties so that they would be shielded as well in terms of the enjoyment of those gardens by the dwellings in front of them. And we should also obviously recognise that there are existing dwellings in that area that are already subject to that level of noise, and it's a matter of buyer beware as well, as these are new properties, and the vendors would be aware of the noise conditions at the site when they do go to purchase the properties. But there are measures on top of that we're satisfied with that would deal with the internal deal with the noise levels and make them acceptable in planning terms. In terms of the loss of green space on the site, well, that's kind of inevitable really when a site is allocated as a development site in the local development plan, and unfortunately we do have to build on greenfield sites in Monmouthshire, as we have very, very few brownfield sites, and we built on most of those anyway, like Fairfield maybe, etc. And Sudbrook Shipyard, etc. Sudbrook Paper Mill site, for instance. So the loss of green space is implicit really in terms of the allocation of the site. But having said that, achieving across the site, we are getting green infrastructure, public open space being provided, as well as it being multifunctional in providing surface water drainage measures. We're getting the trim trail, we're getting the community orchard on Parcel A, and an area of open space down in the southeast of the site nearer where the closing off of Vinegar Hill to vehicular traffic would occur. So there are some good positives coming out of this site in terms of open space provision and GI provision, and we're happy to endorse this site in terms of that aspect and deliverability. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Phil. Right, back to you, Craig.
Yeah, there's a few other comments there, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So there was concerns from Councillor Dimmock with regards to health infrastructure within the area and with regards to the GP services. As you can see within the planning committee reports, we have consulted local GPs and they haven't raised any objections or concerns with the developments. This local development plan, as I said, this is an allocated site within the LDP. As part of that process, we would have also consulted the health board and raised any concerns, and it has been allocated. So the capacity would have been built into their models. As a council and looking forwards towards the replacement local development plan, we are working with Iron Bevan Health Board to look at creating some sort of formula to work out contributions in relation to health infrastructure, and that will be in the future in future development proposals. But this is an allocated site. We have consulted the Health Board on this particular application, and they haven't raised any direct concerns with the development. With regards to service water, this development is one of the first big scale developments, as the applicant's representative Kate Coventry said, to go through the service water drainage legislation and work within the SAB requirements. They have submitted a sustainable drainage application to the Drainage Board, and it is almost fully compliant with the requirements. So it is to the highest standard. Each block will need to look after its own service water and drain naturally. That's why the scheme has been developed in a way that there is significant green infrastructure and swales within the highway system and an attenuation pond. So in terms of surface water drainage and the legislation, it meets those requirements, and we've been working heavily with the drainage colleagues in designing this scheme to that standard. One of the other aspects that Councillor Taylor did raise was with regards to the affordable housing aspect and the pepper potting. Parcel A, which is what we're looking at in terms of a full planning application with full details, it is quite a small scheme in terms of 72 units, and it does comply with our affordable housing SBG, the supplementary planning guidance, which outlines that we should have no pepper potting with up to 15 units clustered together. And in this scheme, we've got 12 units in the southwest corner of the site, and we've got a further 6 within the central location of the site. So it does comply with our affordable housing policy, and there are benefits with rural social landlords in terms of clustering those affordable units, in terms of maintenance and how they the affordable housing companies manage those sites. So there are benefits in the reasons why it does, but it does comply with Monmouthshire's policy, is what I'm trying to say. So service water, affordable housing. The matters being raised is with regards to refuse vehicles, and as you can see in the eternal layout of this site, there is an east to west link which has been designed to the correct standards, and hopefully potentially in the future will enable a bus service potentially to be located in there, and refuse vehicles will obviously also be able to use that highway link as well. So it has been designed to be able to accommodate those elements. The other aspects I think that have been raised mainly related to highways considerations, and I would ask my colleague, if it's okay, Chair, Mark Davis from our Highways Officer, who's been dealing with this planning application, to comment on those matters.
Is Mark with us now today, if anybody wishes to ask? Are you here, Mark?
Hi, Chair, I'm here.
Welcome, Mark. Oh,
Hi.
gosh, you've got a lovely background there.
Yes. But thank you all. Hopefully, I'm not sure whether I picked up all the issues raised by the local councillors. The one particular issue that was raised was when the surveys were undertaken on Vinegar Hill. I've just checked our files, and I think my colleague Helen Hinton may have confirmed this previously. They were undertaken on the 3rd of April. And any apologies to anybody that may have been misinformed by me or others regarding an alternative date. But the actual date was the 13th of April. That was before the half term, and obviously pre-pandemic as well. So it's fairly reflective of actual traffic flows experienced in that locale. As regards the other issues, there were a number, but what I would emphasise to members is that this site is an allocated site, and extensive assessments were undertaken in order to put it forward for candidate site and effectively for it to be approved as such. And all those assessments identified no mitigation required for this development on the local network and specific junctions on the B4245. Therefore, the analysis has been undertaken previously and has been undertaken as part of this application. So the Highway Authority are not here to endorse or agree with the developer here. We have to demonstrate that this development will cause no material harm in terms of safety and capacity on the network. This development does not. That was proved at LDP, and the applicant has proved it here. So we're not looking for any improvements on the local network other than those required to facilitate direct access off Grange Road, amendments to Vinegar Hill, and improvements to Grange Road to enhance pedestrian provision from the site. as regards the members' concerns regarding the existing network, and in particular Dancing Hill, what I would say is that that unfortunate situation already exists. This development is not directly affecting that. Yes, it's going to put an increased number of vehicles on there, but that's not to say that they will exceed the speed limit. That is an existing situation that we as a traffic authority and a policing authority have to address. One thing that members may wish to consider is that I understand, because Grange Road in particular will be 20 miles an hour. 20 miles an hour are going to be rolled out throughout the county and out throughout the Welsh region for 20 miles an hour. So the speed limits are likely to be reduced going forward as well. But non-adherence to speed limits is a enforcement police matter. And that's all we can't expect a development to address that wholesale for the wider community. As I say, all the assessments identify no material harm to the local network. Picking up on the point that Craig has already mentioned regarding the issues with existing developments and the design of existing developments and their inability to accommodate refuse collection, I can assure members that all internal layouts accord with current design criteria, which is manual for streets. The Welsh Government have now adopted what they call a set of common standards, which is for all 22 unit authorities throughout Wales to adopt, and they align themselves with manual for streets. This development accords with those standards, and we have no grounds to dispute the design as submitted to you today. Just quickly going through my notes, I think Craig picked up on the surface water management and the flooding issues raised by the local members regarding ongoing developments and historical issues. I can only reiterate what Craig has said regarding my colleagues in the site approving board, is that this site is fully compliant and will not be approved until such case as it is. So I'm fairly confident, from me being the highway development manager, that the management of surface water for this site will meet Welsh Government standards. Failing, I think that about covers everything, but if there's anything else, I'm more than happy to pick up later on or as and when. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for all that clarification, Mark. Very good of you to take note of all those questions, but don't go away. There might be still some more from other members of the committee. Right, that concludes the local member and so on, and the agent. I believe we have now Councillor Powell with a hand up first, please. Councillor Powell.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was there on Monday, but I'm not a local county councillor, so I can only look at it from an outside view. The only thing that came up to me that was important was the fact that that very narrow road in Vinegar Hill is down to be banned to traffic, that there would only be pedestrians and cyclists using that piece of road. And I think that would be a much better idea. But I'm wondering what sort of barriers would be at each end, because would they be barriers that, should there be an emergency, an ambulance or a fire engine would be able to unlock them and go through? Because I imagine in a very dire emergency that would be a shortcut. But otherwise, I think as long as that's being closed off completely to vehicles, it's going to be far safer for the pedestrians and for cyclists and for children walking and all those sort of things. And I felt when I was listening to all the others, Lisa and Francis, there were marvellously extents. Sorry.
I think he's vice chairman on the show.
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought somebody was coming in. Yeah,
no, sorry.
Their presentations were so detailed because, of course, they're familiar to them. But I didn't really gather from them exactly how they were visualising that piece of road being closed. So I wonder if I could just get that.
Perhaps Mark can answer
Mark,
that.
Mark, just give us the definite idea. But as far as I considered on Monday, it was that it was going to be closed and would only be used for cyclists and pedestrians, which I thought was a much improvement.
Right,
thank you.
Councillor Powell, for that observation.
Chair, Councillor Powell, if I may ask my planning colleagues if they could put the overall layout plan up, I might be able to help in clarifying this for Councillor Powell and other members. And
Thank you, Phil.
apologies if we may have confused things. If I request control, Phil, I should be able to. Can members see me moving my cursor around on the screen?
I can see the layout, but I don't see your cursor at the moment.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll try and explain it as best I can.
That's
I'm
okay,
on
Mark.
camera and I'm having to squint to look at the plan myself. So
this is technology for you.
There's cursor.
Have I got? Can you see my cursor now?
Moving,
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yes.
Phil has kindly allowed me access. Councillor Pearl, apologies if during the presentation we may have misrepresented how Vinegar Hill is to be dealt with. Vinegar Hill is this road here.
Yeah.
You walked this length on Monday.
Yes.
What will happen is Vinegar Hill effectively isn't being closed to through traffic. It will be eventually linked into this estate road here. To follow that there, which is effectively both the estate road and the future east-west link for this part of Mega. What we're intending to close once all this is completed, which is a few years in the future, to be perfectly honest, is that effectively becomes redundant. And what we intend to do is actually close it to traffic, but turn it into what we call a greenway, which will be solely for the use of pedestrians and cyclists to continue their journey then north into the sort of the rural areas to the north of the M4. That will be controlled by way of a suitable provision, be it bollards, pedestrian railings and whatever. And my sole priority here is to prevent vehicle use, because it will be a prohibition of driving over there, but also to prevent motorcycles in particular using it. So it becomes more of a leisure facility for cyclists and pedestrians. The devil's in the detail. It's not shown on this drawing, but there will be facilities and green infrastructure and landscaping provided that prevent its abuse by motorised vehicles effectively. Does that?
Thanks for that explanation. I think we understand that, Mark.
That's
Councillor Powell.
Yes, that's fine. That's what I thought to start with. And then after I heard the other people, I got a bit confused. It seemed to confuse me. That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Councillor Powell. Now, Councillor Jordan next, please.
Thank you, Chair. In 2021, 190,727 electric cars were registered for use on roads in the UK. That forms 11.6% of all cars registered last year. Can we make it a condition that each of these houses have access to electric car charging points?
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Jordan. Yes, this scheme has been developed to date with as members are aware, with regards to viability challenges with regards to the surface water drainage, and we'll bringing the scheme forward. Electric vehicle charging has been a matter of discussion with regards to viability, and if you note within our LDP, the existing LDP, we don't have a direct policy in relation to EV car charging. And this is something that we're looking at with regards to the replacement local development plan as we move forward with climate change aspirations. In terms of planning policy Wales at a national level, if in section 4.140, it does outline that local planning authorities should seek to encourage and support the provision of charging points as part of new development proposals. So we have been having active conversations with the developer, and we have, as of yesterday, had discussions and confirmation that they would be willing to put in the cabling and infrastructure for a 3-point plug to be located on approximately 85% of the parcel A of the site. So we would be able to deliver that as part of a condition if that is something that members would require. So we would have the infrastructure there for people to charge their cars on a 3-point pin, and they would also then have the opportunity opportunity at a future date to put in a rapid charger, which there are significant grants via Welsh Government at the moment to put in if they wanted to. So that is a development that has happened in the last couple of days, and it's something that we can condition, as Councillor Jordan has suggested. So I would suggest, if members are minded to support the officer's recommendation to approve the scheme, it would be with an additional condition to seek a EV charging plan to show that there would be that 3-point pin and infrastructure cabling put in place for up to 85% of the properties. That would be agreed by officers and installed prior to the occupation of the dwellings.
Thank you for that, Craig. I know you say there will be funding coming forward, maybe. I just hope they will reduce the price of electric cars and more people would take it up. But there again, hope you don't get a power cut. Also, I think we have next Councillor Jaz Howard, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've got a number of points, the first of which is that I don't have an objection in principle to the development of the site because it's been long established by the current LDP and there's no point in arguing otherwise. But 4 points I would like answers to, please. The first one is about the responses from the biodiversity and the green infrastructure officers. And I note the concerns raised by both, and particularly the holding objection in relation to the Breezy Bank sink. The report states that it is considered that the concerns raised could be overcome by the recommended conditions. The way that's written insinuates that that's the view of the consultees, although that might not be the case. And I came across in the documents submitted with the application, there's an email from Stacey Delbridge, the biodiversity and ecology officer, to the case officer in August of last year, which was forwarded to the agent last November. And it says, "Hi Helen, apologies for the delayed response. My comments are similar to Andrew's. We will need to seek updated ecology impact assessment to gauge whether the proposals are acceptable in terms of relevant policy and legislation." So to me, that suggests that there's some doubt that the development and the proposed conditions would meet the requirement of PPW 11 to deliver net biodiversity gain. And since November and now, I couldn't see any uploads online to suggest that there had been any updated ecology information. So I'm not convinced that this application is yet acceptable. Okay, next point. I was glad to see condition 12. It's always a concern to me that parking to the side or the rear of a new dwelling could be lost to permitted development. And there are recent developments where this has become a problem and there's been overspill on the street. If I have a particular concern about this site layout, it's that there's a high percentage of spaces in tandem, which is less practical for houses with more than one vehicle, and again encourages overspill to save having to position one vehicle in front of the other, that sort of thing. The next point, the Green Infrastructure Management Plan, and I won't refer to it by its unfortunate acronym, although I did note the obvious letter spacing in the report and that raised a smile. But I see that this is proposed to include hedgerows and buffer strips. Looking at the western and southern sides of the site layout plan, there seems to be a gap between garden boundaries and those to the extent of the site. And would I be right in thinking that those are the hedgerows and buffers referred to? I should be glad to hear that it is the case, because I'd be concerned about including such areas within garden curtilage, as there's always a risk that they'll be eroded and not maintained as such, and that the wildlife connectivity would be lost. And the last comment then, I was kind of concurring with Francis Taylor about the location of the affordable housing, and I had noted the same, and I was thinking also about TAN 2, which requires the tenure of the affordable housings not to be distinguishable on site. And although the designs are fine, materials are comparable with the market housing, they are the only ones that are effectively set around a car park and accessed via dedicated spurs, which I don't think is great, albeit marginally acceptable maybe. And a very last point, not related to this particular agenda item, but I notice on page 7 of the agenda, it refers to PPW 10 and TAN 1, one of which has been superseded and the other has been revoked. So it just needs updating, and I thought I'd mention that before I forget. Thanks a lot, Chair.
Thank you very much for that detailed explanation there for us, Giles. Is that anybody wish to comment on that now? Craig, maybe?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to take.
Thank you, Craig.
Queries. And thank you, Councillor Howard, for those queries, all noted. Might need to come back on a couple of them in terms of getting the information in the background, but I'll answer the queries as I see them. On the point with regards to biodiversity officers and the GI infrastructure officers' comments, that might be something that might be lost in terminology in terms of concerns subject to the conditions that have been outlined in the report. So I have been in significant amount of meetings with the Green Infrastructure Officer and also ecology. A lot of the concerns were around the attenuation pond in the centre of Parcel A, with regards to that being seasonal in terms of in times of flooding. That attenuation pond would flood up and would take additional service water and wouldn't then therefore be usable for the public. But that is a modern design. It is a way of designing green open space in terms of surface water drainage, and it has a multifunctional piece of land which is also there for placemaking in terms of design and breaking up the frontage and the built form of the houses. So there has been, I would suggest, negotiations, discussions and compromises along the way. But in terms of the scheme that's before members today, it is with conditions in relation to biodiversity and green infrastructure, and planning officers are satisfied that it is acceptable in accordance with Planning Policy Wales and our own policy, anyone in the local development plan, subject to those conditions. So those additional requirements, we've got a green infrastructure management plan to maintain the green infrastructure on site, and to my mind, when we look at the layouts, it is heavily influenced with regards to tree planting within the streets, a trim trail around the site, and a public open space within the east, south and east of the site. So we have overcome those issues and have an acceptable scheme now from a planning officer's point of view. In terms of the GI management plan, those hedgerows and buffers, yes, Councillor Howard, I believe you are right, but that is one of the points that we are looking at in the background. But if there are any concerns with that, we'll try and get that over to you within this meeting. And the affordable housing, yes, I do appreciate that the properties, particularly in the southwest of the site, are slightly terraced and slightly different to some of the other sites. But I think in terms of the response I gave earlier, there are benefits to that in terms of the way that the properties are managed. We are delivering on this site 25% affordable housing, so I think it's good to remember that point in terms of providing those homes for those people. Members are aware of the viability issues with this site, so there is reason and rationale there, but it does comply with the affordable housing supplementary planning guidance, and as planning officers we're satisfied that this scheme does deliver in terms of delivering that affordable housing provision.
Thank you very much, Craig. Councillor Brown next, please. Councillor Brown, for your comments.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I was going to reiterate the comment I think that Councillor Jordan made about electric charging points, and I'm pleased to hear that they're going to put in the infrastructure. It mentioned about 85% of Parcel A. Why not 100%? And also what's going to happen to Parcel B, because obviously this is full consent, but I think it's also we're looking at Parcel B as well as probably an outline type of application. The affordable housing obviously is in a cluster, and although the policy says that up to 15 together, I think comments were made about this previously on the Church Road site in Caldicot, that we wanted to see much more pepper potting so that it was integrated within the site a bit better than it is at the moment. The refuge vehicle thing I think has been answered, but with regard to sound, obviously on the area of the site that's near Grange Road, that is close to the motorway, and I did have a look at the Hunter acoustic report, and it mentioned in that effectively in Zone C there'd be acoustic glazing and mechanical ventilation, and in the other areas double glazing and trickle ventilation. But it was mentioned basically either 55 decibels or 50 or up to 57 decibels. So I had a look to see what exactly this meant in terms of what we understand by noise levels. And 60 is considered conversational, but 46 to 65 is like walking down a road in a little city. and who recommends background sound levels of 50 decibels. So what I thought, looking at the site itself, if we go back to the plan that the highways representative looked at, is I would like to actually see a semicircle at the top, or an arch at the top, basically with acoustic fencing around it. And I appreciate that some of the houses are basically with the house and the garden in front, so presumably away from the motorway side, but there are some on the side, for example, that are sort of on one side of it, and with the garden at the front. So I think it would be helpful if consideration was also given to acoustic fencing, so that the gardens could actually be enjoyed. And I presume that the ones near the motorway are basically within zone C. I think that there is an argument, obviously, that the motorway is down in a dip, but I still think that the levels that we're talking about, it would make it much more, the glazing will help, but I think acoustic fencing, which really doesn't cost a great deal, would be helpful in those particular areas, because recently I did look round a property just out of interest, and they had they were near a railway, and they had sort of either double or triple acoustic glazing, but they also had acoustic fencing at the end of the garden, and I think this does improve the situation with regard to noise. With regard to these sort of extra measures, it's important to take account of the fact that this piece of land on the north end of it wasn't part of the original LDP. So I think there is scope for us arguing that you know, these extra measures should be put in. Thank you. So I mean, I'd like to see some conditions with regard to electric charging vehicles, and for both the
fencing,
area A and B, and also I'd like to see some conditions on acoustic fencing within zone C. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any wish to make any comment there on that, Craig, that's been raised by Councillor Brown?
Yes, Chair, I can come back that on those comments from Councillor Brown. And sorry, Councillor Brown, I might not have been very clear earlier in terms of clarity with regards to the EV charging conversations I've had with the developer. They looked at EV charging across the whole site. So I am talking about Parcel A and Parcel B. So what I'm suggesting as a condition, if I can potentially read out, we ask for a plan to show details of electric vehicle charging facilities for the site prior to any starts on any commencement of work on the development at all. So we will have that plan. We will agree the level of EV charging across the whole site A and B, and that will be agreed in writing. The reason I refer to 85% of the site being able to achieve it was a rough calculation that the developer has done based on Parcel A in terms of the orientation and location of the dwellings that can be achieved at the moment. So I believe if we have this condition on the development, we will be able to seek electric vehicle charging across the site, and we'll have a plan to agree so that the exact number of plots that will have the charging is still be agreed, but it'll be a very high proportion as I've outlined. So hopefully that condition will enable members to have confidence that a significant amount of the site will have that ability to have electric vehicle charging. In terms of the noise pollution, there are conditions in relation to the upgrading of the glazing and the ventilation of those properties to the north of the site. They weren't originally allocated as part of the LDP allocation, and so they are outside of that original allocation. But the Environmental Health Officer has looked at this development proposal, and they've reviewed the site, and they have suggested conditions number 16 and condition 17 to ensure that there are higher standards for those plots at the top of the site. So subject to those conditions, conditions and subject to meeting those requirements of insulation, upgrading of the glazing, and also the mechanical ventilation, it is deemed that those properties are acceptable. And as my colleague Phil Thomas did say, that the purchaser of those open market properties would be aware of the location and the siting and the upgraded building fabric conditions that would be achieved by those conditions. So as officers, we're satisfied the environmental health are satisfied after reviewing the details, and there's still some further details and mitigation to be agreed via conditions 16 and 17. So we do feel those points are covered.
Right, thank you, Craig. Councillor Brown, you wish to come back in now?
Yeah, I think yeah, it'd be very helpful if the electric charging vehicle did had obviously the maximum number of electric charging points on each individual dwelling, and you know, that would be helpful to have that. With regard to the Hunter Sound report, the Environmental Health Officer did make a comment which was put in the report to say that they ought to look at extra traffic as a result of the tolls going, and I think the response was effectively, well, this would be negligible, but that's not what Welsh Government studies I've seen in relation to the increase in traffic as a result of the tolls going, and so I don't think that's acceptable. So I think that's one reason why the acoustic fencing, which isn't a great cost, would be very helpful to add as a condition, and I hope that other councillors will be able to support that suggestion. And also taking into account that I think that we were told that the date of the traffic survey was the 3rd of April. Now, the 3rd of April last year was actually after the bank holiday Good Friday, and it was on a Saturday. So that doesn't represent term time traffic, even though it was pre-COVID. So I think that there is, you know, a somewhat underestimate of the traffic levels, and from that point of view, I mean, I know in my own area, for example, in and out of term, when you're in term time, it actually increased the traffic level by 10%, and I know that from studies in my particular area on a busy road. So, and I think the sound levels and the environmental side is important, and I don't think that the comment. They've taken account of the Environmental Health Officer's comment on the need to take account of the tolls going. And I mean, I think it's only a very minimal cost to actually install some acoustic fencing to, you know, facilitate. I mean, the acoustic glazing obviously helps internally, but I'm talking about when people are in their gardens or, you know, in the external environment. I think that would help. Thank you.
Thank you. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is north facing where these houses, and this is what we're talking about with the sound. But I understood, maybe I'm wrong, that we have prevailing southwesterly winds. So that would be blowing in the opposite direction to that. But of course, it changes from, you know, week to week and season to season. But I should have thought if you're facing north, you're not going to get so much noise generated by wind from the motorway. Anyway,
but if you have a look at the plan again, Chair, you can see that some of the properties on the side on that thing have their gardens basically at the side and are very close to it. So I think it would be appropriate to consider that if other councillors are willing to support that.
Right, thank you, Councillor Brown. I now go to Councillor Anthony Eason, please. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I don't wish to make any comments about the development because that's all been thrashed out by the local members, and I've got no overt objections to what's happening there. But I am concerned about the ongoing problem with services to the local community. This will be in an area of maybe 6 square miles from Portskewitt, Sudbrook, all the way to Mega, will be the middle of a development of nearly 1,500 houses, 4,500 people particularly. Every time we've had an application come forward, particularly when the Crick Road came forward in Caldecott, the United Bevan Health Board had no objections. They felt they could cope. We're now in a situation where we've got Dundee East, Dundee West, Church Road in Caldecott, Sudbrook, and we did have Cowent before. and the facilities for doctors, surgeries and dentists has not improved. I'm a member of the Patient Voice, which encompasses Caldecott, Grey Hill Surgery and the Grey Hill bit in Mega. The biggest concern is getting to see a doctor, getting a number of the doctors who are there. And in particularly Mega and Undy, this doctor's surgery in Mega and Undy, just off Mega Square, is no bigger than a small bungalow. And I believe the one in Port Stewart, which is served by the Chepstow practice, is not much bigger either. So the facilities for doctor's surgeries is not, I believe, as well served as the United Bevan Health Board appear to be telling us every time an application goes forward. 1,500 houses, 4,500, maybe 5,000 people. It's quite a lot. Equally with the doctors, dentist surgery, dentist practices. I understand the dentist practices are withdrawing from the National Health System. The one in particular in Caldecott is moving on. We then come to the matter of schools. With the developments in Sudbrook, Port Stewart and Caldecott, it increased the school positions by 150. We then had the development in Undy East, which as I say Undy East, that's the Rockfield area, just as you get towards Roggett. I asked the question at the time, why was there no Section 106 money for being provided for schools there? And I was told that because of space in Mega School, there's no application need for Section 106. We've now got Undy West, as I call it, and we will have an increased number of children there. We don't seem to be catering as well for the children as we ought to be doing. Because if you look at the infrastructure totally, we're shifting children around by buses, or we will be, particularly in Undy East and Undy West, because we're going to find the schools are full. We're already doing it in Caldecott. So I don't believe enough emphasis is being made on facilities for schools. For example, where I didn't come on the site visit, but I know Vinegar Hill well. Maybe there's a case for a school on Vinegar Hill, because a long little trek to some of the other schools. Schools are not being considered. Doctors, surgeons not being considered. Dentists not being considered. And the biggest concern I've also got is we don't have the infrastructure for people to do their shopping. I don't think Caldecott will be able to deal with what is required for the new developments, and most of the people in Undy East, Undy West will probably go to Spitty Park or to Newport, or maybe across the road, across to Bristol. But the ones who do come to Caldecott, particularly the youngsters when they go to school, will still be traversing this B4245. We're doing nothing about the highway infrastructure. I understand what Mark Davis says, that shortly in the next period of time we'll be having 20 mile roads across the whole of the area, but it'll still make these roads unsafe. So I don't believe we're putting in enough thought into the subsidiary requirements when we do the developments. As I said, we've had 1,500 houses in the recent past and in the near future in the area. We need to be looking more positively at the support we're giving to the people, support we're giving to the infrastructure. Another one thing I missed out is buses. We have an inadequate bus service in the area, so people are going to be isolated in these pockets of development if we don't provide the substructure for them to get from A to B and do their shopping and things like that. So I do believe that hasn't been emphasised enough, and we need to be looking at as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony. Do any of the officers wish to comment on that? Please, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Easton, for the concerns that you've raised there with regards to developments and infrastructure requirements. As I said previously, with regards to healthcare infrastructure, we are working collaboratively and speaking to Iron Bevan Health Board, speaking to GPs, asking their opinion as part of this development proposal as to whether they have any objections or concerns with development. And this is an allocated site which would have been given due consideration as part of that local development plan examination. So the inspector would have also had those views and comments and reviewed it when it was allocated. So this population increase, I mean, number of these people will already be living within county anyway and waiting on the housing waiting list for a home as part of the affordable housing, so they'll already be here. But you know, if there is any additional growth in the area, the funding model for GP surgeries is slightly different in terms of it is slightly chicken and egg in terms of if the population is there, they will have additional funding to provide additional services. We are going to keep working in collaboration with Iron Bevan Health Board to keep having these conversations about delivery of homes and what that means for health infrastructure, and we will keep consulting them on planning applications as we have done with this one. In terms of the community infrastructure, this scheme, as outlined within the report, is also providing a number of financial contributions towards community facilities. So we've got contributions towards community services, public open space, educational contributions in terms of school capacity. So we are going to get financial contributions for all of those things to ensure that this development is sustainable and is looking after itself, really, in terms of those financial contributions. So there is a full raft there within the report of financial contributions that we are going. So we do believe this is a sustainable form of development that has addressed those infrastructure requirements, and we have got the financial contributions to address some of those issues as they arise across the scheme, not just for Parcel A, for Parcel B as well. And as you can see, that is outlined within the report if members wanted to look at the figures for those.
Thank you very much.
I come back quickly, Chair. Yes, I have read the report. I'm a bit sceptical about some of the figures, to be honest. But when you say that most of the people will be having these houses are already in the county and need a house, I don't believe that's true. A lot of these houses are going to be snapped up by people from Bristol. We've got 3,000 odd people on the waiting list in Monmouthshire, and none of these, or 18 of these houses on one plot will be to provide support for 18 out of 3,000. We need to be building a complete socially composite housing system whereby we can provide enough houses, like a council houses estate, for these 3,000 people. I do believe that we're not looking after the people who need properties in Monmouthshire or need somewhere to live in Monmouthshire. I think we should be developing a scheme whereby we're building social housing as opposed to affordable housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eason. Craig, we know the 3,000 aren't totally down there in Undy.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Chair. They're not, I know.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. Just sorry, for clarity, I meant the affordable housing. 25% is likely that they would already be in the area, not on the housing waiting list. That's I totally agree that we can control the housing market in terms of where people live and where they come from. But I was making reference to the 25% just for clarity on that point from me, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Councillor Harris next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was originally I'm going to be talking about one thing, and it was affordable housing. And Councillor Eason's just brought up the fact that we've got vast numbers on the housing list. Who knows what will happen after next May's election and what council comes in and what can be done about that. But anyway, going back to my affordable housing point, I have been reassured during the discussion this afternoon that we're going to get all of the 25% affordable housing, because in the past on these allocated sites, once we've agreed who's going to develop, the developers come along with all sorts of lame excuses about now that they're there, they really can't afford to put all the affordable housing they said they were going to put on there. And if we could just have one other reiteration from the officers that we are, without doubt, no exceptions, going to get the 25% affordable housing, I'd be grateful for that. Then going on to what Councillor Brown was saying, and she's very lucky because she has her initial comments, and I think without fail she comes back in with longer speeches after the initial comments. But there we are. She was talking about the traffic sensors, 3rd of April. As far as I remember from Mark, it was the 3rd of April 2019. You know, it's going to be a realistic traffic sensors, as opposed to what would happen maybe a year later under lockdown. And the other thing is about acoustic fencing. It is very expensive and it looks horrible. The thought of getting up to the top of Grange Road and seeing a great slab of acoustic fencing there will really attract people that want to go onto that potentially lovely open site. if we're going to do anything, then let's plant a load more trees along the barrier overlooking the motorway. Certainly not acoustic fencing. I think it looks horrible. So anyway, I've said my bit. Thank you, Madam Chair. There's nothing in what I've heard that's going to put me off voting for this allocation site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris, for your observations. Councillor Becker, please.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll let you
I
come
think,
back after you've had all the comments from the other planning committee.
I haven't had a single chance to speak yet, Louise, so
No,
give me a second.
Yeah, thank
you, Chair. I'm going to keep it very brief.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it very brief. Everybody's discussed a lot around the issues that I would have raised. I mean, essentially for me, this boils down to, when I look at the development, I think once again we're doing the tango with a developer who's trying to get the most out of the lot and not really dovetailing with the community. These aren't the kind of things that we should be building. Since we put that LDP together, we started to realise that. I mean, we're in a place where this isn't the sort of stuff that our communities need. This is houses. It's not, and I'm loath to turn down anything that has 25% affordable. If we had to hang it on something to reject something like this, I would say it's the Future Wellbeing of Generations Act, because it's a contextual thing that this does not help the health of our communities in the county. So that's, I have no other points to raise that anybody else hasn't raised, so I'll leave it at that.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Becker. Councillor Brown now. Sorry, but I wish to allow Councillor Becker to have his say first before you came back. Thank you,
yes, thank you, Chair. It's just I was down as the next speaker, but I appreciate that. It's just coming back from the comments that Councillor Harris made. Obviously, with regard to the 3rd of April, it wasn't clear which particular year it was, but the Environmental Health Officer did say about traffic increases in relation to the tolls going, and that wasn't really adequately addressed by the environmental report. And with regard to acoustic fencing, there is very good quality acoustic fencing that actually does look very pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody else wish to comment now? Craig, once you've spoken then, Craig, I shall ask Councillor Dimmock if she wishes to use her 2 minutes for a summer, and then we'll go to the vote. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was only to clarify Councillor Harris's comments with regards to the affordable housing. Yes, members are considering a fully policy compliant scheme with 25% affordable across the board. Members are aware of the viability concerns with this site, but those have been overcome, and this is delivering 25% across the board. So again, just to clarify that point, I also wanted to make the point that there is a housing mix within this scheme. So in the description, you'll see that there's a mix of 2, 3, 4-bedroom dwellings. This is the sort of thing that we have been talking about, delivering a mix of properties for a range of families to live in, no matter what their circumstances, and demographic as well. So it is trying to provide housing for all types of people. It is meeting those objectives of the council. I appreciate what Councillor Becker was saying, but building resilient, sustainable communities is about providing housing and homes for people, and it is a key objective of the council to deliver these sites which deliver that. And it has been very significant design amendments to this scheme to ensure placemaking credentials are throughout, with the community orchard, with the green infrastructure, and the different housing designs and types that we've got, and mix in the street scene. In terms of the one point about acoustics that has been mentioned a couple of times, I think, and also Councillor Howard's point with regards to hedgerows and in the GI management plan, can I just pass to my colleague Phil Thomas, please, Chair, just to clarify those 2 points, and then hopefully they've answered all of the members' concerns then.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Chair. If I can just share my screen, I'll just try and clarify a few points that were raised during the discussion. Bear with me. If I can make that slightly bigger, sorry. Slideshow. So if you can see, that's the strategic layout there. There will be acoustic screening along the frontage of the site with Grange Road that acknowledges that's a less it's a slightly more hostile corridor in terms of the impact of the M4. So there's going to be considerable planting along the corridor there. Obviously, you can't plant where the estate road is coming in, but that will help buffer the frontages of those houses from Grange Road and obviously the motorway to more importantly. In terms of Councillor Howard's point, if I can go to the next slide, all the periphery of the development will be, the idea is to transfer that to public to public maintenance areas, so that will then be in the gift of the council to then manage in terms of the green infrastructure management plan. So that will include the landscape buffer at the front in terms of acoustic, and also that area between the development and quarry rise, where there'll be a hedgerow, and it's important obviously to make sure that that hedgerow isn't chopped and removed by individual householders. I think having learned from mistakes we've made in previous estates where those boundaries have been in the control of individual householders and they've all looked at it differently and managed it differently, the idea is to maintain that either by the council or via the management company, but those talks will be ongoing, and if it's sensible, then hopefully the developer will pass that on to the council to maintain. But we can't insist on that. It could be that a management company takes that on. It's not within our gift to insist on public ownership of those areas. I hope that helps explain.
Thank you for that, Phil. I expect some of you are wondering why I haven't mentioned bungalows, because that is a pet theme of me when it comes to any planning in large sites. There aren't any on this site, and I was pleased to hear that we have got some flats, and there will be ground floor flats if so needed by somebody with some disability or whatever. But also perhaps when we come into the other site, hopefully if that is developed, that we can have more 2-bedroom flats, that if somebody is in need of a 2-bedroomed, due to physical disabilities within a family, that can be considered there as well. Otherwise, and also porches, which I do like, but I've been informed that porches are more needed in countryside housing than what they are in the urban areas. But saying all of that's more or less got my 2 penneth in. Lisa, do you wish to sum up with anything at all now?
Yes, I do.
Right, 2 minutes, mind, Lisa.
Okay, well, I don't really know where to begin. I don't feel like we are going to be offering good quality housing on this development. The glazing might help when you're inside the house, but outside, I know what we've got in Sudbrook. It's so noisy. It's not enjoyable. I'm really disappointed. On the affordable housing front, happy with the percentage, but again, like Francis Taylor said, I'm really disappointed that we're not pepper potting. I feel like we've taken 1 step forward and 3 steps back. What else is there? Car charging points, obviously support that. One thing I did want to raise, does the buffer include the quarry rise, that the houses that are already there? Will there be a buffer there? And I'm a bit concerned about people accessing doctors still. I don't feel like we've been given a good enough response with regards to that. What else? Oh, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Councillor Becker said. We're meant to be building houses for future generations and for better well-being, and I just really don't feel like this development is that. So thank you, Chair. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you for your contribution and comments, Councillor. Yes, but I must say that there's several affordable housing together in Raglan, and they seem to work very well, and they're very, very good and well managed. Right. Any other conditions or anything else anybody wishes to raise now? No, Councillor Brown has put forward and is asking if any members will support her reasoning to put a condition on for the acoustics barrier. Should it be right that I take a vote on that support, or just take the conditions as they are stated in the report? Craig, can I take some advice off you for that, please?
We need a chair. I'm just speaking to legal colleagues. We would need a seconder to take that vote.
Yes.
So what is the request? Sorry.
I'll ask Councillor Brown to spell it out now, and then we'll be clear on what she is suggesting. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
A condition to be discussed between the officers and developers in relation to acoustic screening, acoustic fencing on the in Zone C of the site.
From an officer's point of view, Chair, and to Councillor Brown, I mean, this has been reviewed by environmental health officers in terms of the acoustics at this site, and is deemed to be acceptable subject to those conditions I've outlined within the report. So there are additional building fabric in terms of the upgrading of the ventilation, the upgrading of the glazing, which has been agreed, and there is also acoustic landscaping, which my colleague Phil Thomas has just shown on the plan as well. So those elements have been. So as officers, we're satisfied that the conditions outlined in the report are acceptable, and that the noise requirements have mitigation has been put in place is acceptable. Councillor Brown would need a seconder if that vote was to be taken.
Right, thank you for that, Craig. Obviously, you have had exhausted consultations with the developer. So you propose what you've just stated there, Councillor Brown. Do you have a seconder, please?
Chair, I'll second that on the basis that it's going back for discussions with the officers. So if Louise Brown could specify exactly what the motion is, because it's the condition is to go back to officers and discuss it. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, go back to officers and the developer to look at acoustic fencing in Zone C, which is obviously the zone which gets more noise.
Specific fencing you're requesting for? Acoustic
fencing as well. I mean, obviously that will be merged in a sense with the landscaping as well. So it may be that the tree screening, could be either within the fencing or in front of it or behind it. It's just really to try to cut the noise levels down in relation to the exteriors of the property as opposed to the interiors of the property. And I think the other condition that's been added has been the one with regard to electric charging, which obviously would have to be added when a vote comes. So I would appreciate it if we could have a vote on that. It may be that the vote will be lost, but I would like to propose that, please. And thank you for the Councillor Easton seconding.
I'll second that for the officers to go back and thrash this out one way or another. I'm happy with that.
Right, thank you, Craig.
Can I just pass over to my legal colleagues just to outline the voting situation with regards to this condition?
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Denzel, will you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My name's Denzel. I'm the solicitor for the planning committee. I think there needs to be some clarity as to what's being asked for there. We can't approve this application subject to a condition that the officers have a discussion with the developer. There either needs, I think the motion either needs to be that we're going to defer the vote until that discussion has been had and can be reported back, or there is no motion. I don't think that you can have I'm not comfortable having approving this planning commission subject to a discussion to be had, because it's unclear as to what needs to happen after that. It's an unclear condition, and therefore the entire.
But Denzel, surely if we go to the vote as and has been seconded and it's failed, we move ahead with as we have been recommended? Yes,
I think that the problem is that if the motion is approved, you would end up with an uncertain planning condition in that.
Yes.
You see and so the motion. So I think Councillor Brown's motion needs to be that would need to be that we defer taking a vote until this discussion has been had, then it's brought back to the planning committee. That Councillor Brown's, the result of the motion at the moment will be that the planning commission will be approved subject to an additional planning condition that a discussion is had, and that's an uncertain planning condition, and I don't think that
yeah, I suppose
that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose you could make it more certain by saying acoustic fencing as agreed with the environmental health officer in relation to.
They haven't agreed that. They haven't agreed that. I think what we should.
Basically to be agreed with. You can, I mean, a lot of the conditions on this site are, you know, to be, you know, you've got to send a plan and it's got to be agreed. I mean, that is quite often the case in relation to conditions.
Yes, well, those conditions are what we would be voting on, but you're putting an extra one now. Sorry, Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Brown keeps coming in and, you know, I want to vote on what I've got in front of me, not something that's, if you like, an afterthought. We've been told by the officers that the acoustic setup for the houses near the motorway are perfectly acceptable, and I've said that I think, for example, that acoustic fencing is ugly, and so you know, as far as I'm concerned, you should all be voting, if we're going to have a vote,
what's in front of us
for the
today?
fact that I don't like acoustic fencing. I think we should agree as we are now and keep putting in bits and pieces that on the day. You know, if this was important, then maybe it could have been brought up much earlier on, that we could have had some supplementary information on this a day or so before, so that we'd be prepared to debate it on the day. Just leave the setup as it is with the conditions that we've got, and I'll be happy to vote on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Jim Higginson first, please, then I'll go back to Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. From where I am, I've been listening to this now for almost 2 hours, and I'm fed up with people coming, some members having a chance to speak on about 4 or 5 occasions, and I don't think it's necessary. This is one of the longest discussions I think that ever I've been present at, and I think we need to get on with the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Higginson. Giles, you're going to be quick because I want to bring Craig in.
Yeah, I am. I must admit, I'm a little bit disappointed to hear the criticism of Councillor Brown. This is one of the strategic sites. It's a large application. It's a large major application. It's our role to challenge and discuss things thoroughly. It's not for us to look at absolutely every consideration in advance. We've got to listen to the arguments of other members, see if we think it's appropriate to give them weight or not. But for heaven's sake, this is our job. We're not here as rubber stamps. Planning officers make mistakes. I know that in my day job, and Craig and everybody else knows they're not right 100% of the time. We're here to consider whether or not it's appropriate, and that's our role. And if people don't like that, they shouldn't be on committee, Chair.
Right, thank you, Giles. Back to you, Craig. You're still smiling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Giles. Yes, we are all human.
Jim, please take your camera off.
Planning officers alike. Yes, we certainly are. I just wanted to try and help and support members really in terms of this discussion. I've been speaking to my colleague Denzel from Legal Services in the meantime. Councillor Brown has made a motion for some additional acoustic fencing to be installed at the site, and that is been seconded by Councillor Eason. So what I would suggest is, if Councillor Brown is happy with this, that we take, or if you were happy, Chair, sorry, that we take a vote based on a condition that acoustic fencing, no development shall commence until acoustic fencing, siting and design will be agreed with the local planning authority, subject to any of the occupation of the dwellings. So we take a vote on whether the planning committee think that condition is necessary or not to meet Councillor Brown's concerns with it. If that motion fails, then we move forward and take a vote on development based on the recommendations of the plan. So we will clearly address Councillor Brown and Councillor Eason's if Councillor Brown think that condition is suitable, and that is the motion she wants to bring forward.
Right, so Councillor Brown has now put a motion forward to add the condition of acoustics barrier, obviously on that northern side. Also, she has a seconded of Tony Eason, and from that proposal, we will take a vote now as to whether the rest of the members of the committee agree with that going forward. Is that correct? Right. Is it possible?
Are you sure, Craig? Councillor Brown brought forward that you would go away and consider this particular aspect. I know that Denzel is not very happy with the wording, but the motion isn't to put up fencing. It is to consider the aspect of whether you need to put up fencing. That's the motion.
But the need for fencing, I believe the acoustics and everything had been looked at and agreed as they were adequate or acceptable. So obviously the developers were not happy with, hadn't suggested fencing. So this is a separate thing really altogether because they had not raised that. Thank you, Craig.
All right, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Thank you, Chair. Can I bring legal in again, just to clarify, so that making sure the procedure is correct for this? But in terms of the acoustic fencing, what I'm saying is that will be agreed. The siting and design of it will be agreed prior to the occupation, and I think Councillor Brown agreed to that. But if I bring Denzel in, he can go through the legalities in terms of the procedure.
Right, Denzel, fire ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Easton is correct there that Councillor Brown's motion initially doesn't match what he said. However, as I suggested, I don't think that her motion as proposed would work. So if she's happy to withdraw her motion and forward the one that Craig suggested to be seconded by Councillor Easton, then I think we can proceed as Craig suggested. If not, if she wants to insist on as originally proposed, I would have concerns about that.
Craig, can you clarify that even more? So it's very echoey when Denzel's speaking.
Two mics on, two speakers on.
So what we need to do is, I think Councillor Brown needs to determine if she would like to withdraw her first motion to have discussions with the developer, and then go with the suggestion that I have made, which is a condition on the siting and design of a acoustic fence on the development proposal. So we would take a vote on that. So if Councillor Brown can explain to us that she wants to remove that first motion to have discussions, and instead we would propose a condition for the siting and design of an acoustic fence on the development.
But would we have to have a separate vote on that, Craig, because it's not stated? So
Yeah.
that is what's stated.
Yeah.
And she has a seconder with Tozeason.
Yes, so if Councillor Brown is happy to remove her first motion, which was to have discussions with the developer about the acoustics, and instead impose a condition on the development for siting and designing of an acoustic fence. So I think it depends on what Councillor Brown's motion is.
Yes, as an additional.
Sorry, Chair, and then just to be clear on how the voting would work, we would have a vote on approval with council with the new condition. And then if councillors don't wish to include that condition, they can vote against it, and we will then have a second vote on the motion as originally presented without that condition.
Right, thank you. Is that possible from Democratic Services now to put that vote for the suggestion of Councillor Brown into the chat bar, please?
Sorry, Chair, to be just a formality, we need Councillor Brown to confirm.
Yes. Go ahead then again, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would be happy with that, because I think it makes it clear that with regard to a plan, I mean, the officers are still involved because they have to approve whatever the plan is. And, you know, it may be only necessary in certain places, you know, for example, the edge of the development where the gardens are nearer or something like that. So I think it would be helpful to have that, and you know, thank you for clarifying and making the condition more certain. Thank you.
Right, we'll now go to the vote as it was seconded, I believe, by Councillor Easton. Is that all clear now to everyone?
Yes, Chair, I'll second that on the basis we'll have clarity on the decision.
Okay, thank you. So to be clear, this is a vote for approval of the plan commission with the amended, with a new condition that Councillor Brown has proposed in relation to being in place an acoustic fence design with fire alarms. Thank you, Chair. So we've had 14 responses, so everyone present has voted. So we've had 5 are in favour and 9 are against. I think that's quite clearly against, so we can now move to the second vote, which is approval as suggested by us. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thank you all members for voting for that additional suggestion. So we'll now go to the vote for the application as we stand, as has been presented today, please. Is that all right, Craig?
Madam Chair, just with one additional condition in relation to the EV charging as discussed, for an EV charging plan to be submitted and agreed.
Yes, thank you. Right.
Just bear with me a moment, Chair. I'll put that into the chat.
Right, thank you, Richard.
Sorry, Chair, I don't think someone's actually proposed a motion for approval.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I move.
Please, will someone propose approval of the application as stated today? And I'd like a proposer and a seconder, please.
Madam Chair, I'll propose it.
And I second it,
proposed
Madam
by
Chair.
Councillor Murphy and seconded by
Jim Higginson.
Jim Higginson. Thank you, Councillor Higginson. We've had a proposal and a seconder. We'll now please go to the vote when Richard is ready. Thank you, members, for being so patient. I've got a bit rusty since missing last month's planning committee, I think. The stay in the Grange Hospital hasn't obviously, it must have taken its toll.
You got a bed, did you?
Yes, I did get a bed. Thank you, Councillor Easton, for a week.
Right down the road from you, but there we are.
We've now had 14 responses to get everyone being able to vote, and they are all for approval. That's party. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Denzel. Thank you for being so patient.
Not a problem.
Okay, we go now to the second application of today, and this is at Great Oak, not far from Raglan and Brunwyn. This is DM/2021/01376, and this is an extension on a household extension there. Who's taking that? Is that you, Andrew? Thank you, Andrew, for being so patient for this application.
No, not at all. Thank you, Chair, and yeah, good afternoon, members. Also, so as you said, this is a household application that's seeking planning permission for a 2-storey rear extension. And just to confirm that this application is presented to you this afternoon, members, following deferral from our delegated panel. So I'll just run through the proposals in the slide so you can see the site there. I think some of the members were on site Monday. It's located in Great Oak, just above Brunwyn, in the sort of cluster of properties that comprise the Kai Capel estate. If you could just move on to the next slide. So this is the dwelling in its current form. This is the rear and side existing elevations. And here are the existing floor plans as they are in situ, with 2 small single-storey elements on the rear. It's a sunroom. I believe that's a storage area. So this is the proposal, the proposed plans showing the rear north-facing elevation as well as the east elevation that faces towards the adjoining semi-detached property number 4, Kai Capel. And on the next slide, you can see the internal layouts across the 2 floors, showing the bedroom above and kitchen dining space below. And then finally, for the benefit of any members that weren't on site Monday morning, here are some photographs of the rear of the property. So you can see there to the right the existing elements that are to be demolished. And that's just a further view, giving the immediate context of the existing dwelling as it adjoins, like I said, the neighbouring semi. So I'll just go through the key material planning considerations on this case. As I say, the proposal is seeking permission to demolish the existing single-storey elements to the rear and to erect a 2-storey extension. And as I stated, this would provide kitchen and dining space to the ground floor and a single bedroom and bathroom at 1st floor level, 2 roof lights would be fitted to the east side of the roof, one serving the new bedroom, one serving the stairwell, whilst 2 dormer windows would be positioned to the west facing roof slope that faces out towards the highway. Details of all the dimensions and the finishing materials are contained at length in the officer's report, so I won't repeat these at this time. In terms of the evaluation assessment from officers, in terms firstly with regards to visual impact, just to clarify, the site of the application does not sit within either a conservation area or an area of outstanding natural beauty. And on balance, officers consider that the design of the proposed extension is acceptable. It would replace smaller elements noted, but we are satisfied that it would read still as a subordinate element to the existing dwelling, and you can see it's sort of punctuated by it being lower than the main ridge line of the existing dwelling. In addition, just the overall design and materials are in keeping with the existing and are considered to be appropriate in the local context. And whilst the extension would be visible from Boxbush Lane, it is deemed that that impact and that visual impact on the street scene would not cause unacceptable harm. Members who have visited the site, and for those who may know the area generally, will have also noted that there is a similar, albeit larger, 2-storey rear extension that's found at number 1 Kai Capel, which is on the directly opposite this, that is also visible from the entrance into Kai Capel. So I think officers are satisfied on balance that the design proposal would accord with the relevant criteria within policy DES 1, and Phil's just showing there on screen the larger rear extension on the opposite side. In terms of residential amenity and third-party amenity, the primary consideration here in terms of any potential impact is on the adjoining semi-detached property number 4. And perhaps, Phil, if you could move to the proposed elevations just to facilitate members' understanding. In this case, a 45-degree line has been annotated on the submitted plans, as you can see on the presentation, which illustrates that the roof ridge of the extension would not adversely affect the amenity of the immediate neighbour. However, if we look at the floor plan, it is acknowledged that the 45-degree line from the wall would cause some impact, but as you can see on the floor plans, this would only account for a small corner of the property that would be only a technical breach of that 45-degree line. And on balance, officers are of the view that any impact here would be limited, particularly as the wall facing number 4 of the extension is only 3 meters high, with the resulting roof space then sloping away from them. And given this, it's felt that the impact extension would not be sufficient to unacceptably harm the amenity of the neighbouring property. With regards to any loss of sunlight on the neighbouring dwelling, again, it is acknowledged that there would be some effect, particularly at certain points of the year. However, the proposed extension is to the north-facing rear elevation, and owing to this, light to this particular elevation at the rear is already limited. Accordingly, whilst there would be some impact on the adjoining number 4, it's considered that the proposal would not fail to preserve reasonable levels of privacy or harm the amenity of occupiers of neighbouring properties. The extension itself is set away from the common boundary by approximately 2.8 metres, and the only windows above first floor level facing towards number 4 would be roof lights that would be 1.7 metres above the floor level, so any overlooking caused would be minimal. And whilst one of the roof lights would serve a stairway and therefore not habitable room, following negotiation with the case officer, the roof light that would serve bedroom 1 has been amended and would be obscure glazed that will be controlled through appropriate planning condition to ensure that that is implemented and retained as such in perpetuity. And so as stated, officers on balance are of the view that the proposal does not conflict with any of the requirements of policies EP1 or the detailed criteria in DES 1 of the LVP. In terms of biodiversity interests, a preliminary assessment has been provided in support of the application, which found no evidence of bats within the building or the roof voids, and the building was deemed to be well maintained, with no potential for bat roosts. However, as per current policy requirements, a means of ecological enhancement has been provided, and this would be served by a sparrow terrace, and again that will be secured and maintained through appropriate planning condition. So therefore, members, in respect to this householder application, it has been very carefully considered by officers, and the concerns raised by local residents have given due consideration and are fully noted and understood. However, subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report, it is presented to you today, members, with the recommendation that it be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Andrew. And when you look at it, it looks like a bungalow, what we would have thought at one time when you talk about a 2-storey extension. We tend to look at that more or less as a 1.5, as we did years ago, didn't we? It sort of doesn't look to be, as you would normally describe, a 2-storey extension. Anyway, that's just my observation. So is that a new line of hands up, obviously in the chat line? And it looks as though Councillor Brown is the first one with a hand up. Please, Councillor Brown.
I think it's Giles Howard.
Sorry, I haven't scrolled on the new ones. That's my fault entirely. No, I haven't got it. Right,
help. It's Giles, then me, then Louise.
Right, thank you. Councillor Howard first, then, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've had a look at the plans, and I agree with the officer's report. It's the extension set away from the boundary with the neighbouring house. The first floor accommodation is within the roof space of the extension, and I always like to think back to the applicant's fallback position, and I don't tend to give that much weight to 45-degree and 25-degree rules because it depends on the context of the site. And in this case, if the applicant, for example, wanted to benefit from permitted development rights, they could build a 4-metre deep extension right on the boundary with the neighbouring house, with the eaves at the height, the existing height, and with quite a steep pitched roof, which would probably have more of an impact on the residents. So I think this is the most thoughtful way of arranging the extension, and I don't see any material reasons why we shouldn't grant consent. I think the design's fine, and it doesn't have a detrimental impact on the amenity of the neighbour to a degree that warrants refusal. So I'm happy to move it, Chair. Thanks.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Jaz Howard. Right, Councillor Phil Murphy next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and if I can get my camera to work very well. Yeah, I was there on Monday. It is going to have a major impact on number 4. An awful lot of sunlight will be cut out, but unlike number 1, where the extension, I know it's bigger, but it's facing south. So the sun tracks around the back of properties 1 and 3, and is denied from the gardens of 2 and 4. So it will have an impact on number 4. But I agree with Councillor Howard. It's although a precedent has been set over the road, which is slightly different circumstances, I still think it sets enough of a precedent to allow this one to go forward. So I'm happy to second the application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Louise Brown. You're mute, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Chair. I also went on the site visit, and we went into the property and we went into the neighbouring property, and we did discuss about you know, which way the sun comes and everything else, but the neighbour did mention that effectively in the afternoon and evening then there would be a concern about a reduction in the level of light that the neighbour had, and this was because of the fact that the garden at the back isn't necessarily that large, so it means quite a high proportion of the back garden will actually be covered by the extension as such. And the next door neighbour has a patio area that's paved out with a bench, which is obviously slightly lower, that is used as a sitting area, and obviously the extension I believe will impact on that. So I think that's you know, something to consider, and it's not something that you would necessarily notice unless you'd been to see both the property itself and the next door property. I can't comment with regard to other extensions because obviously we didn't necessarily look at that, but I think obviously it's been referred, I think, was it by the local member because of concerns about this. So I think it's something for you know, the rest of the members to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody else wish to comment now, or do you wish to answer any of those comments at all, Andrew?
Well, there's not too many specific points to come back to there in terms of the Councillor Brown's points. Just to confirm, the reason the ward member originally referred it to the delegated panel was on grounds of visual impact and loss of amenity impacting on the neighbouring property. I think I just would take the opportunity to clarify any reference I've made to the extension across the way at number 1 was really in regards to assessing the visual impact and the sort of scale in a design point of view. I certainly wouldn't rely on it as a way of justifying impact in terms of third party amenity. A, they're different sizes, and B, they're completely different orientations. So just to clarify, wasn't relying on that as some sort of precedent in terms of third party amenity. It has been looked at on its own merits, and as acknowledged throughout the presentation, yes, we accept there will be some degree of impact, but the mitigating circumstances in terms of the distance from the boundary, the north facing orientation, for all those reasons discussed, on its own merits and on balance, we don't feel as officers there is sufficient ground to recommend refusal. So I just wanted to clarify on that comparison then to number 1, and also the reasons it was originally referred to Delhi panel.
Right, thank you very much, Andrew. Anyone else wish to comment at all? Well, Councillor Jaz Howard, I think you've moved approval and seconded by Councillor Murphy. If nobody else wishes to comment, I shall go to the vote for approval.
Good afternoon, Chair. We've had all 14 responses back. There are 13 for approval and 1 abstention. So that motion is quite clearly passed. Thank you.
Right, so that's carried and approved then, Denzel. Thank you all very much, and thank you all very much indeed for your attendance today. Although, as we said, it's been a very sad day, and I'm sure Peter would have been, if possible, commented on a lot of that and the procedures this afternoon. So may he rest in peace, and we will update members, I'm sure, when the funeral arrangements have been agreed. But thank you all very much indeed for your attendance today.
It's a sad day, but Happy New Year.
It is very sad.
Happy New Year.
Right, thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye.